I really liked that song, and it sort of fell back in on the priority list, so to speak. And it got pushed back because these other great songs, Down, and Hourglass, and Mirror, and then Desert Rose was a big jam, but didn't turn out like it should have, but it was still kind of up ahead of. And On the Wind started and Masquerade, they kind of fell to the background.
The song On the Wind, I don't remember us playing it live very much. It did have a pretty interesting chord progression on the verses that went up from a half step on the chords. I do remember that being interesting.
Complex track and underrated. To me, the more you listen to it, the better it gets. And I think that was one that just kind of slipped through the cracks a little bit. Should have been more of a big time song. Anyway, it's one of those things that I liked it originally, and I liked it when we put it down, but it really grew on me over the years when I would occasionally listen to the album, and you get to that track, and I would just be, oh man, this is just, it's cool. It just gets better and better with age to me.
That was basically it on my style of drumming back then. I just would play something, and if it sounded good, then I would just go with it, run with it. Some stuff sounded good, some stuff didn't.
I really liked it, but it didn't quite come out like I envisioned, but there was some bright spots to it. There was a few, I came up with some oddball harmonies, but they sound really cool to me now, all this time later. And Joe has his now famous toggle switch lead. He goes into these leads and he throws the toggle. He borrowed my Les Paul, I believe, with the toggle switch, and he's just back and forth. Real awesome sound, unique sound.
The guitar solo was just a throwaway. I was just goofing around, and it wasn't anything I was trying to keep. But I used Phillips Les Paul, and Les Pauls have a toggle switch. So while I was using it, I was goofing off for the solo and started kind of messing around, playing some notes and missing with the toggle switch. And like I said, I wasn't going to keep it, but I ended up keeping it on the track, and I guess the guys heard it and decided, hey, we need to keep that. And I really didn't mean to. It's really not very musical of a solo.
Back then, the creative juices it's all about sound. It doesn't matter how easy or weird, how easy it is to play it, or what kind of oddball thing you came up with. It's all about the sound. So Joe's toggle switch is a simple lead. It's nothing crazy, and he sort of laughed it off. But we love it because it just sounds so unique. And it didn't sound like a group of kids in a room trying to make a CD. It sounded like something off of some soundtrack song, or something you would hear polished. Different sound, really cool. Got some cool lyrics there with some meaning and some embellishments, and that I listened to it several months back more favorably than in years past, because I sort of, because when you have something in mind and then it works out a little bit differently, sometimes it can sour you a little bit. But then more recently, in my older age, more middle age, I heard it and was like, it's pretty cool, the different elements of it. And and that was sort of On the Wind was right around the end of the first CD. Like, it almost could have gone on the first CD, but not quite. I think we maybe had wrapped up the first CD, and then I had written that in the interim. But it's another Revolver special. It's another one of those typical starts and stops, chord changes. It's in flats, I think. So it's not just major chords, and just one of those start, stops, breaks, some hits, and some, filler riffs in between drum hits where there's nothing. Just one of those complex songs. It's just kind of a real gem. Everything we did was so instinctive and sound oriented. You got a lot of, and then, I kind of that little signature thing there. I do F here, going to, what is that, F sharp. You're just playing by instinct and sound, and it just kind of gives you more of an appreciation for what you did in your youth, what you created just on a feel. But then, like I said, the parts may be easy to play now that I'm older and more experienced, but getting the exact timing and the beat of it, you're doing a lot of beats here, but then it's like you got to do it just right if you're trying to replicate what you did. And so you kind of appreciate your young self going, man, it was just instinct and then repetition is all I could say.
I ended up playing on, I guess, the verse parts. I may have my parts wrong, but I ended up playing kind of this arpeggiated thing. And so on throughout.
And it's, that doing that lick is easy, but it's not as easy as you think to get the exact timing of what we were doing. It was like we were spot on. We knew we did it over and over, and we knew the feel. And exactly how somehow we just knew how many hits and beats we were doing. And we had a lot of, if you sat down and critiqued it, you can find, and there's not many, but there's a few little spots where there are some just split second hitches of timing or whatever. But for the most part, what we're doing timing wise and with the starts and stops is really pretty complex, and we mostly nail it. We were all just together. Spot on with each other more than we realized.
So On the Wind, it was just toms on the verses, and then that stop and then snare into the beat. Yeah, really cool drum part. Yeah, but that one was fun. I like to be more up tempo and fast with fills.
sometimes when writing a song, there was a band or a certain thing that would kind of inspire you. And I remember Heart of Steel is one I wrote, and I wrote it on acoustic. A lot, especially earlier, a lot of the songs I wrote on bass, but I wrote this song on an acoustic guitar, probably Phillips Fender, and he was probably at work and didn't know that I was jamming on it. But so I play, and it's like B, F sharp, E is the main hook, and the chorus progression, so B, F sharp, E.
So that's one of Matt's songs called Heart of Steel. I believe Matt probably played the rhythm guitar parts on it.
But it was upbeat. It was I thought it was kind of cool, and it was fun to do, because then when I did it, I show it to them. We're at the practice pad, and it's like I get to play guitar, and that was cool because I hadn't even been playing guitar very long, but like I picked it up from them. You know, we're all jamming. You spend so much time jamming with these guys. I'm looking at Joe, I'm looking at Philip, and I'm okay. And so you just pick up on stuff. So I remember picking up bar chords, and then, you know, gradually picking up the main open chords and minors and majors, whatnot. Anyway, so I want to get, you know, I get to put on the guitar and sing lead. It was cool, and so that's how we did it. White trash and, you know, distortion, and it's fun. You know, you get to put the bass down for a minute, and I'm the guitar player for this one. That was cool. Joe picks up bass, and Joe's playing bass. That was awesome. Philip does the lead on that because he played most of that anyway, because he was too lazy to learn the chords, and so he would play the leads.
Typical situation where Matt's doing a song and I'm trying to find something to do. I mean, I'm not going to sing. I didn't really know how to harmonize, at least harmonize and play, and didn't want to just strum chords, and, you know, so I came up with some lead parts, and I like those. Like, Heart of Steel almost sounded like the Strokes several years before they even came out. I mean, I always liked that. We liked that song. Driving, fun, just rock and roll song.
And Joe and I would kind of make fun of him behind his back. It's like, and he played good leads on there, so it's cool. It worked out, but we were just kind of like, you know, just being how we were. It's like, he doesn't even bother to learn the chords. He's just over there playing the leads.
Heart of Steel, that was a great number of Matt's, you know. I played some lead, Joe played lead. But again, I tended to play lead on Matt's stuff because I'm transposing off of like, bass notes, and, you know, Joe could do that. He could look at the bass and immediately go to the chords, and I didn't want to do that, and I didn't really feel like copying Joe's rhythm.
But there's stuff where I had to be really limited, and those were the ones that were just like, okay, you know, they weren't my top favorites, but they're still good songs.
And I actually played slide on this one. One of the few songs that I played slide on, I was just trying to learn how to do some of those techniques. Some of the songs on Imaginary Joe kind of fell victim to that. And Philip had some lead parts in it too. A lot of the songs that Matt played the rhythm parts on, it just made sense for Philip to kind of come up with a part other than the rhythm part, since Matt was playing that guitar part. So, pretty cool joint effort.
Some kind of little pull off, kind of quick for me, really fast run, and I was kind of proud of it. And then until I heard Joe put his licks in and his slide guitar, and it just felt like a grub. Felt like Pete Townsend looking up at Keith Richards. I felt like a grub. And so Joe's licks put me to shame on that. But great, except I will say I did have on that bridge part or whatever that was.
So that part
was fun, and so kind of a little bit of a screamer, and so that one we did a few times in front of small crowds at the practice pad. Exciting. It's just, there's nothing like being young and cooking up your own song, and you get to know tonight we're going to practice, and you get to jam it out, and you've got people there just showing up to see you. It's awesome. But I remember that about it, and then it's kind of a yelling ending there, and it was, even if it didn't turn out Matchbox 20, it was an up-tempo, good fast-paced, high-energy rocker.
I can totally hear Hootie and the Blowfish doing that.
And I had kind of a Matchbox 20 feel, so that was kind of in my mind. It was like I had that kind of feel or vibe, and so it was almost like, I'm going to write a Matchbox 20 song. It doesn't quite turn out that way. If you listen to it, it's like, what's he talking about? But that's how it started. And sometimes you write something and then it writes itself, or it goes the direction that it's going to go, and you might be you may have that flavor or that vibe, and it just, sometimes it just depends. But that's how it started off to me. I'm kind of jamming to that and singing the chorus lines, and they're kind of sarcastic, they're really just kind of tongue-in-cheek, like, I'm saying this, but it's not really how I feel.
You can use me time and again, I don't mind. My heart is made of steel, my eyes are blind. I won't see you leaving every time. What you did is what I had in mind. I don't mind at all. And it real up-tempo, driving straight rock, where it was before the Strokes, but that's what it sounds like right before the Strokes. To me, it sounds like the Strokes style of music, and Matt cooked it up before they did.
At the time, I hadn't played much slide guitar, and the solo kind of sounded something like this.
Heart of Steel was one, and I wrote that. Most of the songs I would write for bass, I talked about earlier. You're going to sing it on the bass, you might as well write it that way. That was handy. The Heart of Steel, I wrote it on guitar. It was like in B.
And Matt did all his own backups. He did the harmonies on that song.
So I wrote it on guitar, and I was like, I'm going to play it. We did a few practices or jam sessions, and I'd play the rhythm. So it was kind of fun as a change-up. So it's like I got my white trash is what I called it. I had a Fender Squier white, pretty cool looking Fender guitar, electric guitar. It was a little dirty sounding, probably just needed new strings, but white trash was a funny name.
But those lyrics, man, you can seem so hollow to me sometimes. How did you ever catch my eye? I can say you never crossed my mind. Truth is, it's hard to live a lie.
So I'm playing, I'm on the electric guitar, this is cool, and I'm singing, playing the rhythm to it. And so Philip would play the leads. I don't think he, at the time, ever bothered to learn the chords. He was just, and he played some cool lead on it. And Joe was on bass. It was kind of fun. Not for the recording, but, when we were jamming. But recording that track, though, I did put down the guitar, so I thought that was cool. It's like, yeah, I played guitar on this one.
I didn't like to be told what to do on the drums because I played drums, and I'm like, I've been playing music longer than any of you guys, and I was kind of arrogant about it. I probably wish I wouldn't have been, but hey, that's what you are when you're 20.
So on Heart of Steel, Matt did all the rhythm guitar parts, and I'm not sure if an acoustic was laid down, but I think it was to fatten up the rhythm track. He played the electric rhythm and then possibly an acoustic rhythm, but he played all the rhythm parts. And I played lead, and Joe played lead and slide guitar.
Good lead work, both of them. Joe puts in a sweet, real short, but good slide guitar work. That was great. And Phillips leads mostly through the song. So another one of those fun songs where everybody's doing something interesting.
Joe's slide on Heart of Steel was really good. We liked it. We all liked it. Really good stuff. Especially for he's about 19 at the time, just learning slide. But then his other solo is the one that really put me to shame. It was just a blistering solo, real quick and compact, but just tears it up and puts my leads to shame. And
so in Heart of Steel, there's this little phrase that I played going from a verse to a bridge, a little short solo. And I had a note in there that's really out of key, but it sounds kind of cool if you're doing it up to speed and land on it. Sounds awful if you land on it and don't resolve. But anyway, so here's kind of what I was playing. And I kind of did some of this stuff on some other solos too, on other songs, where you kind of land on a note that's not really necessarily in key, and as long as you resolve right, because if you land on that note by itself, it's not in key. It's kind of a passing note to a note that is, and so anyway. Adds a little color.
So you
can use me anytime, that's fine. Wild man now. Whoa, whoa, hey, yeah. No, 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 say no, no. Whoa, whoa, hey, yeah. No, no, say no, no.
I remember Masquerade. I like Masquerade. That's probably one of my favorites. There's a girl who lives next door. Yeah, that was fun. I liked playing that drum beat.
But Masquerade definitely could have gone on the first CD if we had more time and money and worked it up. It was there.
Masquerade, On the Wind. There's a bunch of songs on that album that the bass and the drums make the song. And so...
Okay, so Masquerade, great song, underrated I think. Still think it's a great song. And drums were great on it and bass was good. I think that was a good combo. The bass and drum parts really were key to that song. Although they're a great melody.
So he played on everything except those two songs, Summer's Gone and Masquerade. They got pushed back to the end, and Crimson Vision got pushed back. Those were probably the last three songs they got worked on. And Joe just did Precious Little on Crimson Vision, and he did nothing on Summer's Gone or Masquerade.
I've always been pretty disappointed that I didn't make it on Summer's Gone and Masquerade. I really like the songs, and I just hate that it didn't work out, that I didn't get to play on them.
We had started a whole different take of Masquerade, and we scrapped it. And Joe did play on that version of it. There was some, more demo incarnation of Masquerade that Joe probably, I'm pretty sure he played on, and that's what he remembers, I think. And then we had to just scrap it and start fresh, and we started laying the groundwork for that take and that manifestation of Masquerade, and it was too late. Joe was gone, and so I wound up having to do all the guitar.
Jason's drumming on Masquerade, really cool stuff, and a lot of that was complex.
I added an ending to it where it jams and rocks out, and I had to play all that lead at the end, and I like that. It turned out pretty well on that.
Masquerade was one of the best songs on the album, in my opinion, and one of my favorites. Philip wrote it, and acoustic guitar, capo, very melodic, and just great song. I loved it immediately. And the lyrics were really interesting. They've got kind of a interplay of kind of love song sounding lyrics, and to me, I just kind of get, like, it seems like there's a progression where it sort of becomes a little ironic maybe, so it seems like it's not quite what it seems with the first verse. Really kind of cool, but it does, because of that, it also has a feel of like the early Revolver love song style, melodic, acoustic. So it really kind of feels like it has its birth in our first album, but really kind of halfway with our new stuff, the way it rocks out at the end, just hard, heavy, energetic rock. So it's really unique. It's almost like a 38th Street song in a way.
Masquerade, there were several early versions. One of them was a demo of just me and my guitar, and then the next one was a full band outtake, and Joe played on that. Then there was the final version. Joe didn't make it to that. One interesting thing about the final version, the differences between the early version and the final version, is the heavy use of reverb on the vocals, and probably drums and everything else. Who knows? But for sure the vocals, it's heavy reverb. And Matt said, you know, it fits the song, the feel of the song. The dry vocals just weren't, I don't know, it just didn't convey the feeling. But anyway, yes, it's very saturated with reverb on the vocals, but that was done on purpose for those reasons. And in the early versions, there was a long lead-in intro, and that came about from sitting at the apartment, jamming, sitting on the couch jamming, and kind of being in the zone, playing these leads. And I was thinking about Wish You Were Here. I mean, not directly, but indirectly, it was kind of in my mind, floating around. The stuff that goes into that, that's a lead-in acoustic intro with bendy, soulful kind of leads, and I just kind of had that in mind.
But love it. It's one of my favorites. One of my favorite all-time bass parts. So one of the things I love writing bass to original songs, Philip stuff in particular. That's your one thing. If he was the songwriter and he's going to sing it, so it's like the one thing you bring to it probably is bass, if you're me. And so I always enjoyed that. To me, I always brought my best bass part, writing wise, and especially if it was melodic. So
Masquerade, that was one that almost fell apart. Joe had already quit the band, and he put guitar down, an acoustic guitar at least, on one of the early takes, which survived, and you know I've got it on CD, but it just did something wasn't right. It wasn't blending and meshing with the rest of the rhythm section. Somehow his acoustic thing that he laid down, it just was off a little bit, and I had a rhythm, and then he put an acoustic rhythm. Maybe mine was the electric rhythm for the early foundation, and then he put an acoustic, and it was just too soft. And if Joe ever has any weakness, sometimes it's a lack of aggression, because it's hard to criticize any of his phenomenal playing, but sometimes he's a little too soft and a little too passive. And that's sort of what it was on Masquerade's acoustic rhythm, was just a little soft, and then my rhythm was more of a ham-fisted kind of rhythm, a grungy rhythm, and it just, the two didn't mesh, so we scrapped it. In fact, we scrapped the whole take and we just started over and redid it, but he's gone, so then us having to scrap, the basic tracks and start over obviously meant three of us,
not bragging at all. To me, I think the bass was great because it was melodic, but it's not just, the bass is great, I'm great. It's his song, he wrote the song, and then you've got the drums too. So it's really just, it's not that much of a, to say the part you wrote is great. It's really, you're giving more credit to the other guys, and I feel that way on a lot of that stuff, because Jason's drumming was just out of this world. And I even told him recently, I'm like, man, you were a beast on drums on that. I just love it. If you love drums, just listen to that track for the drums. And it's just awesome. I mean, he pours energy into that, and just tremendous drumming. So you're feeding off of that. I'm like, you're not going to come up with a lame part or basic when you got a killer drummer like that. So it's like the songwriter wrote a cool tune, melody, drummer's killing it. So, I give them credit for that.
So on Masquerade, the final ending after the jam and the wah pedal solo and all that, there's sort of like a little tag ending final ending mellows out, and it goes, will my songs of love ever reach her ears? Will they stir her heart? Will they fill her eyes with tears? Will they fill her eyes with tears, or will they disappear? And then it ends on that F minor. And earlier versions, not audio, but on paper, I've still got the paper somewhere, and it shows the lyrics were originally, will my songs of love ever reach her ears? Will they stir her heart? Will they fill her eyes with tears? Will they filter through the years, or will they disappear? And I wish I had kept that like that. It's more poetic, and it makes it a little more interesting. And anyway, so the ending was, will my songs of love ever reach her ear? Will they stir her heart? Will they fill her eyes with tears? Will they fill her eyes with tears? Will they disappear? And Matt doesn't care for that final chord going back to the F sharp minor. And I mean, I'm fine with it, but I do also kind of wish we had ended on this, or I had ended on this, because it fits with the disappear and just have that hanging. So this is what it would have sounded like if I had kept that second to last line in there, like I wish I had. Will my songs of love ever reach her ears? Will they stir her heart? Will they fill her eyes with tears? Will they filter through the years? Or will they disappear? And then let it, hang there and disappear. That way would have been better. So that's how it should have gone. And from henceforth it shall be. But I think bass, it's important to pick that out and listen to the melodic bass. It really makes the song enjoyable, along with the other stuff. But even more so than that, and it's hard to overstate the drums and the importance of the drums, but as far as the songwriter, Philip did just an interesting little acoustic ditty, but then he turns it into a monster rocker at the end. It was phenomenal. So one of the sad things about it, though, Joe was pretty much gone. Whether it was official or not, he was gone, and so we knew, me, Philip, and Jason, we knew we were going to have to record that, just us with no Joe.
And then, there's a girl across the road and various things like that. And with songwriting, sometimes, especially this far down the road, 20 years later, you look back and what was that about? What was I writing? And sometimes you can remember and sometimes you can't. But the vague recollection I have of things like that is just bits. You just collect bits. A girl, you liked or dated, or one that you thought about and it never worked out, you didn't get together, or one that might have had a crush on you, but you were dating someone else, and just bits and pieces of those scenarios, and you kind of tie them up into one deal. And sometimes that happened, almost in the same time period, obviously, but you're thinking about this one and this one's thinking about you, and you're seeing this one, and it's just sort of a little jumble that made for a nice little song. Afterwards, I sort of soured on it. It was a little corny, but recently Matt was, had some good words for it, like, oh, that's a great song. And
I'll joke with Philip and Joe. It's like it's one of those. There's only a handful of songs I tell them that get me excited about life, and that's one of them. And one of them is Joe's solo on Life's Highway. And hey, Spy, excited about life. But Joe's solo on Life's Highway at the end of the song, second solo, just blows me away. There's never a time that I hear it that I don't get excited. And then same thing with, I told them, same thing with Philip's solo at the end of Masquerade. It's one of those rare ones that any time, any place, I can hear it, and it just makes me feel excited about life. And I love it.
And really, it almost made it onto the first CD. It was in that time period. It could have gone, but we didn't have it worked up enough. Wasn't ready, so we just let it slide. And it wound up on the next CD. And at first, it was well received. Jason thought it was great. Joe probably liked it. It was well received, but then I soured on it a little bit later. But now it's gone back up a little bit in my estimation, especially hearing some of that positive feedback recently from Matt. But it was just a simple, with those minors, that E minor really drives the song. And so, I go, there's a little tag at the end of that, but over that I played wah pedal effects, and that was on the BR8. I didn't have a wah pedal, it was an effect that was on the box itself, and then I ran that through there, and it turned out pretty well. Not bad for a backup quarterback lead player. I was pretty proud of that as far as a number 2 lead guy goes.
So he put that, there was a build-up, so you've got an acoustic and fairly melodic song, but then he puts a build-up and solo at the end, but the build-up's with an acoustic. I mean, pretty clever, pretty cool to be able to do that, and that was all his idea, of course. And I think he had Zeppelin in mind to have a really Led Zeppelin feel. I think he's on like the D chord capo, but building it up on the D and before the solo kicks, and he had to tell us, so like with Jason and me, back off, stop, don't play, we're raring to go, and then he's like, no, stop, and he does the build-up part, and then we come in, and just really cool, really unique. I mean, who does that? You don't hear anything like that, but it's just so cool that what we wrote, and he really had a knack for this, but we wrote stuff that was great, and whether some was melodic, some really heavy rocking out stuff, but we wrote great stuff that was totally unique. It didn't sound like, because you can get original music that has a sound, you guys wrote this and that's cool, but it sounds like ZZ Top, or it sounds like Chuck Berry, if anybody even writes that anymore, but like that particular style. Oh, that sounds like old rock. That sounds like, what we did was just unique. It might have little bits of certain things, but overall it didn't sound like you were trying to be anybody, and just trying to be us. And so that was, I always say that's probably the 5th best song on the album. And it's not like 5th best. But in context, aside from what I call the Revolver Gospels, 1 through 4, and those songs were just so tremendous, it's like outside of that, then this one is the next best on the album by far to me. Just, it's amazing.
So that didn't make the final version, I think, because it was such a long song. It was pushing 5 minutes, 4.5, 5 minutes, and that would have made it even longer. And I think that's part of, and then also we had to splice that onto the beginning. I think we had already done the to separately try to put that on the beginning. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like that. So it seems like it was a lot of editing work to get that over and patch it in seamlessly. Plus, it extended the song, and we just scrapped it and went with the, for the intro.
So that's a song called Masquerade. Got pretty close to what Philip probably played on the intro.
And then Philip really pulled it out at the end with the monster guitar solo he did. Awesome. I think it's an underrated, great song. And how it goes into the time change at the end, and just kind of builds up, and staying focused there. So anyway, if I can remember it, it was melodic, so I wanted a melodic bass line. It just kind of came natural, but the verses went something like. So it was really fun.
I actually didn't play on this song. I do remember listening to it, and Philip played some really awesome stuff in it. Had an awesome guitar solo at the end. And the song just kind of would build as it progressed. And really liked how they did it. I think I remember listening to it and thinking to myself, there's really not much I can do here. And I believe it was probably kind of toward the end of me being in the group, possibly even. And so just kind of missed out on playing on it. Pretty cool song, and Philip did a great job on it.
And so that's kind of sad, but and Joe definitely would have brought, as great as he was and what he brought to our original songs, he would have brought something unique and awesome. And as it stands, though, I mean, there was no Joe, so we had to soldier on, and we did it, the three of us. And so Philip had this idea for a solo at the end to kind of build it up and hit it home. And so there's the picture of us in that back room in the band house, Jason and me, and we're passed out on the floor there. And there's no alcohol involved, not a drop of anything. That was just pure exhaustion. That was the night it was a late night that we were recording Masquerade. And it was well into the early morning. It was at least 2 a.m. or later. And we just passed out, and he was recording that solo. And I remember waking up at some point after he'd finished the solo and listening to it, and I was just blown away. It was just like, wow, we were passed out, and this is what you did while we were asleep, and it was like, wow. It was just an awesome solo, wall style effect, and to this day I still love it. I mean, it was just like that night hearing it. Every time I hear it now, it's phenomenal. One of my all-time favorite lead solos.
And I was nervous because it's like, well, I got to do all the guitar for this song then. And I had to put in these little leads and licks, and I didn't even know how. I was like, I can do a solo. You give me a space in the middle of a song, I can solo, pretty decent, but just to put in licks and little, I didn't know what I was doing. And recently Joe mentioned those in there and said, oh yeah, they sounded really good. I don't know if he was just trying to be polite or nice, but some of that, like the beginning, it was fingerstyle, and that was not my forte, and it's still not. I'm better at fingerstyle than I was then, but it's never been my strong suit, and it certainly wasn't then. That's what it called for. That's, so I'm doing and finger pick, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need Joe to do this, but I had to do it myself. And then strum it's capoed, so it's not these are not the real chords, but relatively speaking, with the capo on, I think the 2nd fret, you know, you strum that E minor, you strum that C, you strum that D, and that was just acoustic. And then as the producer, I'm, you know, listening, and, you know, I go, need something else. So then I got my electric and put on this slightly reverb kind of effect, and then just strum those one strum on each one of those chords, overlay on the top of that acoustic with that, and it had this fuller, more polished sound. And I thought, I like that, but boy, I don't know if that I'm doing something cheesy or what, because it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. We were all, you know, producing for the first time, and you know, making our own recording, engineering, producing, putting together this CD that would become Imaginary Joe, and we had no experience. We were learning on the fly. So I just had some insecurities about that, or a little bit paranoid, and going, is this even what I'm supposed to be doing? Well, now that I listen to it 20 years later, I'm like, oh, it's great. I love it.
So Masquerade's another song that I did not make. I didn't make it on the final cut. I remember us recording it, and I played some rhythm guitar on it, and for whatever reason, it didn't work out, and we didn't use it. Kind of like Summer's Gone, same thing. Both of those songs were kind of toward the end of me being with the group.
Maybe it's just nostalgia or ego, I don't know what it is, mix of all that. Or maybe it did really turn out sounding good. And I think it did turn out sounding good, because you've got an acoustic rhythm and then you've got an electric reverb overlay. It just makes sense. And now when I hear it on better speakers than we ever had back then, you know, fuller sound, it's just like, yeah, we got it right. I really like that. And then, I don't know where the monster ending came from, and that solo. Seems like I did that goofing around, like it wasn't supposed to be part of the song, but I'd be sitting around on the couch at the apartment or something and just jamming. You know, sometimes you just jam out of frustration, stress relief, just fun, just to jam, and I would just jam to that deal, and I don't think it was supposed to be officially in the song, but it made it in, and it makes the song pretty much. But then my solo at the end, I had to do it because Joe's not there, and I don't remember why or how I came up with that or how that came about. Maybe just with the chord jam, it's just like, well, we gotta have a solo. I don't know. So I just set up the wall and just went nuts on just noodling around on a wall pedal effect, and it came out sounding great.
But Masquerade was one where it's probably a little bit of a challenging song to drum to. And he, great drum fills and creative stuff he came up with. It was really cool. I like my bass part, of course, for that. For Masquerade, it was, I had fun. You know, that's like I said, you know, you don't try to want to brag really, but it's like original music that I could do that, and that was my thing. Philip's playing Masquerade, and it's melodic, it's got a good melody, and you're liking the song. So I'm having fun coming up with something, and it was just kind of a melodic bass line, fun little runs and things like that. So I was like hearing that one. It was fun to play too.
disagree, 'cause she never can be sure if love is free. It's such a mystery, and it's a crazy game we play. Nothing's gonna change all of this array, and I know you'll miss me for eternity. And you live the choices that you make, playing in shame. It's all a masquerade. There's a girl across the road, thinking she wants me. There's a girl across the road, thinks she wants me. Girls know what her feelings are, 'cause you can't be sure. It's too early in the end, and she's immature. Never change. There's a girl across the years, I hope she waits for me. There's a girl across the years, I hope she waits for me. She brings me to my knees. She's everything I dream. She's a fantasy, and it's a crazy game we play, and nothing is gonna change. It's all in disarray, and I know you'll miss me for eternity. And you live for the choices that you make, playing in shame. It's all a masquerade. Will the songs of love ever reach your ears? Will they stir her heart? Will they fill her eyes with tears? Will they filter through the years? Or will they disappear?
Matt had a song called Your Misery that was really a 1-6-4-5 chord progression throughout the verses, but his intro and chorus chords were rather interesting, and it went something like this.
There were some songs that I didn't really care to play drums on. I can't remember, but that was one of the
Probably
ones.
Your Misery.
Yeah, there was a couple of them I did not like.
So the other really good song that Matt had on the second CD that lived in the shadows of the other big ones was Your Misery. He reworked it couple years later and made it even better, but you know, it was too late by then. And he points out that he had more of a bright, happy sound on the verse. And as the title suggests, Your Misery, it's a pretty forlorn kind of song, more negative overtones, but it's a bright verse. Like, it goes, it sounds like old school 50s rock kind of stuff, and it's real high. And then, but excellent lyrics, like, I would rather be left to wonder than understand your mystery. I would rather live without you than live within your misery. And everything follows suit like that. I would rather be drowning than swimming in your troubled sea. Like, really high. But then the chorus is where, you know, it's really the best part. Musically, and he knew it, which is why he reworked it. He put in some suspended deals in the verses and dropped the melody, you know, made it lower. It was even better, but that was, you know, later. It was too late after the fact. But musically, that part wasn't that great. It was just a cookie cutter chord progression for a verse. Not bad, but not anything to write home about per se. But the lyrics over that were great.
I remember one of my songs on there, Your Misery. I think, looking back on that, I think lyrically it was pretty good. It was a pretty good wordplay, interplay. Lyrically, it's pretty interesting. You only bring me misery, you only bring me down. Kind of a cliche. That was just the hook or the middle part, but the verses played off of that, and they were pretty good, I think.
But with Imaginary Joe, what made it hard for me as a drummer was trying to lay down the guitar track first, and I'd have to drum to that guitar track, and that was hard. We did take after take after take. I mean, hours and hours, to the point I was getting frustrated. Philip was just like a Nazi about that stuff, and we'd get into fights, and I'm like, dude, I'm so tired of hearing you talk about this and that. You gotta practice, you gotta do this. It was almost like it was, there for a little bit, it was like it wasn't being fun. I didn't enjoy it. And then it was like, we started really playing, and then once I get the tracks down, and then it started becoming fun. But before, I was frustrated.
The really interesting part was the chorus. You had G, and E flat, F. Nothing special about an F chord, but the way it drops to that to resolve is just really cool. And that's the chorus, also the intro. And he enlisted me to play that intro because he wanted something gritty and grungy, and Joe's too nice and clean, and you know, he, from what I remember, Joe put some kind of, you know, Joe got the first call as the ace to put in the intro, but Matt kind of, hey, can you, you know, and I was like, yeah, you know, we can put something ballsy on there, like heavy, dirty, you know, so. That's the intro, but it's also the chorus and the you only bring me misery, you only bring me down, you only bring me misery, you only bring me down. Then I put in a harmony part to that, which I really liked, and Matt was leery of, and I had to really work on him, like, hey, yeah, sounds good, sounds alternative, got a good, mine was lower, I was just kind of riding underneath the melody line and just kind of almost like singing bass or something. Misery, you won't bring me down. You know, something like that, and I liked it. And he let it slide as the executive producer. He left it in there, and I think it really fattens up the chorus. I think it
does a lot. That's another example. I can sit here and brag about my contributions to one of these songs. It's a Revolver song, team effort, group effort, written by Matt. It's his song, but then everybody contributes, and everybody feels sort of a stake in it. Everybody's got a stake, a little bit of ownership in that.
Well, that's when things got interesting in creativity. We decided that we weren't going to do a recording studio. We were going to record everything ourselves with the VR8, which made it great because then the creativity really started coming out, and you really started to see what we were about. You really started to see the guitar work on both ends. You really started seeing different drum tracks because we had all the time we needed. All we had to do was fine-tune recording processes and all that.
So that's how it, then you get to the solo, and Joe has a sort of blistering solo, kind of long. He extended, I think Matt said he extended some measures to give Joe more, but Joe kind of starts off with a, kind of, and he's got these high notes, and then he had so many measures. I remember him telling me, like, it's too long. I wish he hadn't extended it. What do I do? And so I was like, okay, you've got this, like, something like that, and then I go, okay, we'll bring it down. And that's sort of, as a producer for this song, co-producer, you kind of, like, I couldn't have played what Joe played. It was great. It was, technical. Could have come out of Nashville or New York, LA. Very technical and very airtight. But I could hear a sound and I said, descending, take it down. And then he's like, okay. And then I'm like, because you kind of, then I go, like, and then he sort of, that kind of, and that was me saying, hey, take it down, and, because it's up, and then bring it down, and then go back to, wailing away, and then he kind of just burns it up after that, and then it goes into a bass solo. So then we go into, so it's a pretty good bass solo, and hey, the bass player wrote it. Why not write himself a solo towards the end? And then it goes out, and Jason's drums, I don't remember anything all that unique. I mean, he just played what needed to be played, and which is good.
So Matt had this song called Your Misery, and the first I guess couple riffs or measures or two of the solo, I played this kind of country lick that you hear a lot in Southern rock, and you also hear it in even heavier rock with a lot of distortion on it. But it really comes from this steel guitar phrase that a lot of country guys use and play that sounds like this. And you can really make it sound more like a steel depending on how you phrase the lick and how you're bending the notes. And sometimes they call that chicken picking. But anyway, so I use that phrase, but with quite a bit of distortion on it, and it sounded something like this, the opening couple measures. So that's how I was using that, and then of course the rest of the solo goes on, and I'm kind of playing out of minor pentatonic and blues scales. But that was my little hook phrase to start the solo.
After I did it, though,
it was too late. It made it on the album the way it is, but I got to think about it. I didn't like how I did it later because it's sort of an angst song, you know, it's kind of a pain lyric song. And then I'm like, it's too bright. You know, I had this just bright, fast, verses, and I was like, man, I really missed that. I would go back later and do a kind of a redo just as a demo, just myself, but I think I hit the true feel for the song. I kind of slowed it down and threw in some suspended chord changes instead of the bright, happy sound. It was more melancholic, and I think it wound up better that way, but I mean, it was too late by then. But on that one, Joe's got a pretty, you know, a long extended solo on that one, and that was pretty good. I threw in like a little bass solo measure, so to speak, so it's a little novelty, but that's what I always remember it for, is like, yeah, I shouldn't have done it that way. It's just too bright and happy sounding when the lyrics, you know, were more dark. But that one was a good live one too. People enjoyed that one.
Two lonely hearts beating without a cause.
So Two Lonely Hearts is one of Jason's songs, and it's one of those emotionally crafted ballads full of loneliness and heartache. Jason was always has been an expert at writing some of these.
Then his other one was Two Lonely Hearts, but he also had Tonight, which we love that song, but he never polished it. He never crafted and completed a clean, polished version of that song. It was just all rough demos, but we love the rough demos, but it wasn't good enough. I mean, and I've listened to it again recently, the song Tonight, and although it's great, the recording quality's poor, and there's a mistake. I mean, you can hear some false notes and things going on in there. I mean, it's a demo, and that's demo stuff. That's what you're going to get a lot of times, but it couldn't make the cut based on quality, but I wish it had. We all wish it had. And most of us, I think, like Tonight better than Two Lonely Hearts. But Two Lonely Hearts, he put the time into, he really polished it up. And we pretty much all feel that Tonight's the better song, but Two Lonely Hearts got the better production, and therefore it went on the album. So Jason's got, you know, his part of Standing Outside, and then he's got Two Lonely Hearts. So, you know, because the second CD was 14 songs, and it could have been more. Another thing we ran up against is you had about a 45-minute, that was about the amount of time that you had on a CD. I mean, you couldn't make an hour and a half album and cram it on a CD. There wasn't enough disk space and memory and all that. So you had these things you were up against with how many songs do I have compared to him, and then the spacing, and got to get some of Jason. So Matt could have had at least a couple more songs on that CD, and I could have had a couple more songs on that CD, but you got to throw Jason some songs. So that's just how it played out. And but Tonight, yeah, we really liked it. It just needed more. He needed to tighten up the lyrics and especially the production quality. He never went past demo quality on that.
And I don't remember playing on it. I don't recall playing on the song. I think Jason played all the guitar parts, the fingerstyle part on acoustic guitar, and I think he played even the electric guitar parts that are on it, and maybe even some leads throughout the song. Matt, however, did play bass on it, but I don't remember why I wasn't included. It could have been one of those late songs toward the end of me quitting the band and not coming around as much, and that might have explained why I missed the boat on getting on that song.
Two Lonely Hearts, Jason played all the guitars. He played the main rhythm or fingerstyle acoustic, but then I think he might have even used an electric for the chorus and for the big, you know, only God knows, like he did all of that.
Look at you, what a sight there is. Everyone agrees. Hear your name, hear within this flame, running through my veins. All that remains is an image in my brain. Compliments about.
Yeah, Crimson Vision, man. It's like, look at me. I mean, just comes in. It kicks off right from the get-go with an epic crash. I mean, the song starts with a crash. And the lyrics, I mean, wonderfully woven, philosophical lyrics, and very good writing for that, and
Kind of turned out to be a sort of an epic song, if you will. 5 minutes long, big ideas. The lyrics really, kind of went sky high, literally and figuratively, as far as in scope and in what was trying to be expressed, and also the word pictures, kind of soaring. If you imagine soaring above the clouds in an airplane or like an eagle, and I don't know, because it's been so long now, but I could have even been sort of thinking of Pink Floyd's "Learning to Fly," those type of lyrics.
Crimson Vision was probably my favorite song. Dun, dun, that was such a great song. I remember, and it's crazy because the flood back of memories you get when you re-listen to these tracks. Crimson Vision, I mean...
There's another big kind of anthem, kind of big sound rocker on there towards the back of the album, Crimson Vision.
Those notes got so high on the D chord that I decided to drop relative D, which is the tuning that I used for Mirror. And if you just drop the top string down to D and then relative tune everything else, so you've got a D here and a D here, and I kind of joke around and say that I invented that tuning. I doubt I did, but I still don't know of anybody that's used that or talked about that. And we all know about drop D and dadgad and open G tuning and various other things like that, but I still haven't really come across anybody using that, what I call relative D, because you just drop it down into D, then relative to itself, and you D and D, and I guess you could call it open D tuning, and I'm sure somebody's used it before. I didn't invent it, but as far as I knew, I invented it for my purposes. And anyway, so I thought, well, I use that for Mirror, why not use this for Crimson Vision? It'll drop it down a little bit to where it's easier to hit those high notes. It went something like this. Man, that one gets better and better with time for me. That's it's kind of an epic.
And when I think of the song, I kind of think of different parts or sections, and it starts out with kind of a mellow acoustic guitar, and gradually gets louder and builds throughout the song. And then the end of the song, you've got all these diverse layers of guitars, and kind of like this big crescendo at the end.
It started off as sort of a poetic, just lyrical thing, and sort of a melody. And, a lot of times you write songs lots of different ways. It's not always the same thing every time. But, it can start off, you have a little melody in your head, and then you find the chords to it. Or you can start off with, chords that you like, and you start piecing them together, and then you put in a melody that weaves through the chords, and then you like that, and it goes from there. So there's all sorts of ways, and it can happen many different ways. This one, it was sort of a poetry, lyrical poem type of thing, and then a melody was with it.
Which is one of my favorite songs that you wrote, by the way, because I always liked it. I always liked the guitar intro.
The first solo was only about a minute in on a 5-minute song. And it begins with a variation on the intro. The intro started with a sequence of lower notes, like, and then the solo comes in the middle of that, and it's just a short space of time, just a couple of measures or so. Now on that one, I don't recall wanting Joe to play that. I probably wanted to play it myself, and I wanted to be colorful and have bends and things. And I tried specifically to think outside the box, like don't play like you normally would play in a predictable sequence. Try to jump around from notes to note unexpectedly. And one of the things that came to mind was Tuesday's Gone. I love the bends, and I love how the notes jump kind of to unexpected places. So I had that in mind. Then I used a wah pedal effect. I didn't have a wah pedal, but they had that effect on the BR8, so that's what I ran it through. And so the solo, about a minute in, started like this. Lyrically, that was a really good, really deep, interesting lyrics. Philip was really getting better and better. It's kind of sad that the way that album ended, that group, we were all just getting started, and I was getting better at Hourglass and Down were kind of hits on that, so to speak. So I was coming into my own, and Philip was really starting to take off, lyrically and whatnot. But that one was very wordy, very smart. Y'all and your big words. Eloquent. Burdens you bear are in the air above my head, suspended by a thread. Another one of those kind of like, what in the world? But, that's sort of a reference to the Sword of Damocles. But, so that sort of makes sense. And then, if destiny, if she really ever knew that I existed, how she would cry. Oh, how she would cry for the way it's all been twisted. And, I don't know, I mean, that could
hark back to some teen angst. You know, sometimes, you know, sounds have colors, and you can kind of see a certain color or a certain shade that goes along with a melody or a song. And it can even be a song on the radio, somebody else's song, CD, or your own song, and it's like there's this color scheme to it a lot of times. And, you know, this poem was just sort of had a purple, and maybe that has to do with horizons and, you know, the Rocky Mountains, you know, Purple Mountains majesty type of feeling, very likely. And, you know, as Matt's mentioned before, Purple Soliloquy, the working title of this sort of poem/song, and it has this little melody and it goes from there. So then there's lots of lines, and you kind of talk about yourself, and you talk about other people, you talk about God, you know, anything that you can just, anything that's majestic really, and or an eagle or an airplane, you know, anything that's up there that can see everything, and anything that soars, and a big grand scale type of thing. And then at that point you have your melody, and you have your meter pattern, and you're putting stuff in place, and on the poem side it's fallen into place. So then you just sort of, you know, some of these things kind of come out of nowhere, and then you look back and you go, well, what is that? You know, like, what does that mean, or how does that even fit in the song?
But the title he had, I got to throw this in because I'll never, it's, you know, he titled it, his working title was Purple Soliloquy. And I was just like, no. Yeah, that's great for an English paper, but that's too much. You got to, so I said, Crimson Vision. Boom, and that stuck. So I was like, yeah, you got to call it that. That sounds better. It's a rock song. That sounds better for a rock song.
Interesting, especially when it comes from your own hand and your own brain. But like an image in my brain, never again will I see myself the same. I mean, some of that stuff I don't really know what it is or where it came from. Aside from the backdrop that I just set up there, I mean, it all falls into place within that canvas, and you know, all the colors go on that type of canvas. But aside from that, specifically, some of those things you don't know, on a subconscious level, there's always subconscious things. The id is always trying to claw its way to the surface. So I sit here and say this, my conscious mind is telling you there's nothing there, but I'll bet there's more than meets the eye.
That one was another one sort of like Desert Rose that had big sound potential, didn't quite hit the way I was thinking it would, but it's good. It's got the drum beat's interesting. It's got a march beat Jason put in there, so it's really it's a cool song to go back and listen to. I think it was probably missing some of Joe's epic soaring lead solo. I can't remember. I think he did put something down on it, but he was half gone, I think, so he wasn't really all in on that part.
The chorus obviously is pretty self-explanatory. Now I'm a bird and I want to spread my wings, see so many things. I'm in the sky, this is where I will belong, laughing in the face of fear. Vision expands, here is all that's near, now I'm the one above you. And you can sort of picture skydiving, or even airplane flying, you know, or even mountain climbing, that sort of thing. And that's just sort of the word picture there.
And when I think of it, and when I first heard the song, I immediately thought of some other songs that I was listening to at the time. And Isn't It a Pity by George Harrison always kind of come to mind. Maybe like a Goo Goo Dolls song, something that would have been relevant in the 90s or early 2000s time frame. There's lots of songs that come to mind that kind of do that kind of take you on a journey, you might say, starting out in one place and ending in another. And that's kind of what I've always thought of whenever I've listened to the song. And it kind of takes you somewhere.
like I said, Jason did a lot of his own engineering on drums, setting up mic stands and figuring out where he wanted to put the microphones. And at first we had one mic for drums, and then we got more advanced and figured out how to run multiple mics. And we wound up doing, maybe on some of the songs we did maybe 3, mic a snare drum and mic a tom, and then mic one back for kind of up for cymbals, back farther to pick up ambient sound. But then how do you do that? Because the little BR8, well, we would run those microphones into the mixer board. Then we figured out how to connect the mixer board to the input on the BR8. So that's how we did multi-microphone inputs on this. Anyway, so Jason, that's engineering himself. Obviously, we co-engineered, and we engineered our own sounds on our guitars and amps and placements and things like that. But anyway, as a general rule for this second CD that we were making, we were the producers, but whoever wrote the song was the executive producer with the final say. And then the other guys would co-produce if they wanted to. I'm not sure every song had a co-producer. There might have been 1 or 2 or a handful of songs that might have been single produced by the guy that wrote them. Anyway,
I think I must have. I didn't care for it. I didn't dislike it, but there was a little bit of a sad streak with it to me. I think I just, looking back on it as we were recording it, and there was something wrong emotionally for me, and it had to do with the breakup. Joe was gone, and so it was really melancholic to me. It always hit me that way. So
I almost wanted some percussion sounds, but we just didn't get around to doing it with time constraints and things. But some kind of, I never thought to, mic yourself up and kind of, go off your strings and various, we probably thought we needed a turntable, 2 turntables and a microphone kind of deal. But, I wanted some kind of extra percussion. It turned out okay. And it was a challenge, though, because it was this, I keep saying epic, but it was this big, epic, grand, kind of thing, ambitious song.
I think that's why initially I didn't care for, and I also felt like it was as an epic, it didn't, I think I felt like it was supposed to be bigger and better than it was, which is totally unfair because you look at it now, it's epic. It's epic. So I think it's more just an emotional reaction, just kind of being sad at the time recording it. But
it was a very ambitious song, and it was a challenge in a lot of ways, and some of those was trying to get it all wrapped up, tied back in together, and we pulled it off mostly. I mean, there's one little hitch there, but I don't really want to highlight it. I guess I just did. But, so yeah, it turned out 5-minute song. Joe, it was kind of fading out, and Joe's got a little bit on there. He put, I think, like a really subtle slide at the end from the 4-minute mark to the 5-minute mark, the ending. He's got some subtle slide work, and then somewhere around the second or third verse, he's got a bend, and maybe it was me, but I think it was Joe. I'm just not for sure, but he's bending note that comes back in that bridges the gap between the chorus and the next upcoming verse. But not a lot of guitar work, not a lot of contribution from Joe. So again, I had to play that ending solo.
the drums, you got to talk about the drums. I think the more you go back and listen to it, the drums really stand out. And things kind of come back over time. I recall, with very foggy memory, but it was at least Philip, and maybe Philip and I think both of us, but at least Philip for sure, we were hitting the crash and the ride. So when we're recording the drums, and I want to say floor tom maybe too. And that was probably me, because the floor tom was my favorite as far as the drums. So anyway, so Jason's recording it's a march beat, and so it's really cool. That's unique all through the song, march beat. But it's like a machine gun march beat. I was just listening to it, and that's what it makes me think of, because he's just, his energy. He's doing a march beat, but he was so energetic and powerful on the drums. It's just, a heavy pounding march beat. It's not like a, Whistling Dixie, 1800s army march beat kind of. It's a heavy-handed, awesome, consistent all the way through anyway. But in order to do that, if I recall correctly, we'll have to get some from Jason on that, but he's doing the march beat all the way through, and we were hitting crashes. Now he would probably with one hand, but we were to add the emphasis on the crash. We were Philip, I think, was hitting the ride. We probably had 2 drumsticks hitting the ride and one of the front cymbals, and at least, and then I think I was probably adding the floor tom hit with. So it's just cool memories. That was a cool song to record. The drums are just powerful and they sound great.
And again, you had that big sound, and Jason, again, it's another testament to his versatility and creativity as a drummer. But we wanted that. We paid a little extra attention to the drums on that track because we wanted it to sound huge. We wanted a timpani, and we wanted, march beat, all this kind of. We wanted it to sound like drums were coming off of a mountaintop or something like that.
So the drum part's on Crimson Vision. Who came up with the snare beat?
I come up with that because
March beat.
I come up with the march beat because I figured a standard beat would not suit the song well. So watch your steps. So I come up with that because I thought it would really showcase the song a lot better. So when I came up with that, it was really cool because it gave it power, it gave it for the song to have, and kept it subtle at the same time.
Matt and myself, we were like, we want a big sound, and we want it to sound grand. And then, so we almost, one of us, either me or Matt, was like, we talked about a timpani. Well, if we could just get a timpani in for this big, heavy, low, crashing drum sound. Obviously, we couldn't do that, but so we tried to replicate that kind of concept, that kind of idea for it. Then one of us, and I'm not sure who, but one of us, it might have been me, but it could have been Matt, one of us came up with the march beat, like, okay, for these verses, do a march beat. And Jason was sort of like any drummer would, like, wait a minute, are you kidding me? You can't just, hey, this is going to be a march beat. I guess you can, but it's a challenge because unless you specifically set out with a song that, hey, let's start with a march beat and go into something. But anyway, without getting too technical, it was a challenge, and Jason thought about it, and he worked on it for a little bit, not long. He was really quick with all that stuff, but he kind of worked on it for a minute or two, and then went, okay, I think I can make this work, and then he did. And he put this march beat in, and then we did that. I think we tried a few versions of it, and I think the final one, we just stuck with the march beat all the way through.
I thought we need to do this huge marching style beat.
We had.
It was great.
I was hitting the top.
Yeah, on the recording part.
Every fourth beat.
Yeah,
because we wanted
on my low tom. Yeah, you were, because because we only had one deal. Because when we recorded the drum tracks, we would record them with the mixing board. I would come up with a lot of the ways to record stuff, because we were like, how are we going to record the drum track? It's going to take up 4 tracks, and we're not going to be able to do anything. And once you started compressing tracks on top of tracks, you didn't have any control over the volume.
And then we might have gone back for some drum overdubs, which is rare, and getting really clever. You don't have a lot of extra tracks to use on a little machine like that, so you have to get clever with your usage. And how we started sort of getting into how you bounce tracks. You could combine tracks by doing what they call bouncing, and trying to basically, and then optimizing. You go in and optimize and get rid of to save memory and stuff on your disc.
all the tracks that you had overdubbed, then you'd optimize and delete everything up to the newest. Very complicated stuff for, you know, for back then and the technology of then, and for us at that age, and first time producers, engineers, and all that, first time recording. These days it doesn't sound that, you know, big a deal, but it was, and we figured out how to bounce and optimize and do all this stuff. And so you had to be very frugal with your track space and memory space and all that. So it seems like we tried to do a drum overdub, and that's right. One of these, the backup track for the drums, Jason and I were hitting toms every so, you know, fourth beat or something, and I was helping him out, or maybe I was doing that while he was playing the march beat on his snare. I can't quite recall, but I remember having a stick and just pounding his floor tom every fourth beat kind of thing, and going, no, I hope I don't, you know, hit the run, get out of time. And I didn't. I mean, it's simple enough, but when you don't do that, it can be a little bit, and you're recording and time is of the essence. But, you know, still fun, but slightly nervous feeling.
So we ended up having to, you know, put mics on our mixing board, and I actually had drum mics. And we come up with, you know, that method of recording, which worked out well. And that drum beat, the march style beat to that song, was almost made the song just like the lead part did. Because, you know, anybody that knows that song will know exactly what it is whenever the lead's played. I want to know how. That's cool. I always wondered how you came up with that idea. That's a pretty cool idea. I mean, that's a good song too. But that's a cool drum beat that we played.
Did you mention that you wanted a timpani on that?
Yeah, I wanted timpani. That'd have been cool, like 2 timpanis, dong, you know, like. Yeah, I wanted timpanis. That'd be cool. And then I think I used to have that big old ride cymbal that I sold it a couple of years ago in a garage sale, and that was some of the crash cymbal sound, where I was sitting there playing that, and then you were hitting the ride cymbal and the tom. I wouldn't have been doing it, but yeah, it had a really explosive sound for sure.
So for the ending, I knew I wanted about a minute plus of a solo to end it, and I'm not totally sure, but I kind of remember wanting Joe to do that, and for one reason or another it didn't happen. He was kind of fading out, showing up less, and then quit. So however that played out, it fell to me, but I knew what I wanted. I knew I wanted highs and lows, wanted it to soar and then bottom out. I also didn't want a bunch of notes. I wanted a limited amount of notes with a lot of bends and melodic. So I just threw in some licks like and then down.
Crimson Vision is a song that I didn't really have a major part in, mainly because after I listened to Philip's guitar parts, I didn't really feel like I could do anything better than what he played. He had some really good hooks, guitar riffs throughout the song.
So for the ending of Crimson Vision, after the bending leads and the big drums and the big bass and the epic sound, I wanted to condense it down to something smaller for the outro, and kind of like something you would hear on Pink Floyd records. And you know, so I wanted to scale it down, and then I wanted a ukulele, but obviously none of us had one or really knew how to play one. So I had to improvise, and what I came up with was playing the chords in a higher position to kind of emulate a ukulele type sound. And also, not long before working on this song, I stumbled on this effect on the BR8, and it was like a scratchy record player. You could hear the hisses and pops. I thought that's really cool, and this was the perfect chance to use that. And so it scales down, gets really quiet, simulated ukulele, scratchy record sound, fades into oblivion.
One of Philip's songs, one of the rockers, just a monster jam, Desert Rose.
So Desert Rose, I wrote that as a big, heavy rocker, a jam song more than anything. And it was under the pressure of Matt's development. He was skyrocketing into songwriting with these great songs, and they were heavy, up-tempo, all that kind of stuff, Hourglass, Down, things like that, especially those two. So for me, it was like, I responded with Mirror, but I believe before I did Mirror, Desert Rose was kind of the answer to, and Born That Way, they were in there. I don't know which one came first, but Born That Way and Desert Rose were sort of the immediate responses, and then later Mirror.
Songs like Desert Rose and Crimson Vision, both of which are Philip songs. He just came up with a pretty incredible guitar hooks and melodies that really made those songs stand out. And a lot of credit goes back to Jason and Matt with what they would bring to the table and playing on those songs. And
with Desert Rose, it was all about suspense. There wasn't much timing, if any, between the riffs and the hits and all that, and then going into the vocal lines where the rhythm goes steady and everything. I mean, it was the riff and chord, and then it went into the verses. But before it went into the verses, you crank up as loud as you can. Most of the time there was people watching. You turn out the lights, get that strobe light going, or whatever. You'd have something like that. You'd have atmosphere. Or occasionally it was just us with, Shane there, maybe Brad, somebody else, but pretty much just us. And we would do the same thing even if it was just us. Lights out, atmosphere, and cranking up, and it's as loud as you can get it. And I would hold those chords, and you'd hold it, and as long as you could get away with it, as long as the sustain was filling the room and people were still, and they were still intense and hanging on it, and you just let it ring out as long as possible. And then especially when people were there, you would do that, and it would fill the room with suspense to go along with the sustain that was filling the room. And so that was the nature and the essence of Desert Rose, which you just couldn't do that on the BR8. You had to condense it down into a box, and you had to have timing. You had to, like, okay, da-na-na-na-na, hold it 1, 2, 3, 4, da-na-na, and it had to come back in as quick as possible, to be a song.
One of our big rockers on Imaginary Joe that we played a lot live was the last track of the album, song called Desert Rose, when we went to record the song, I never did feel like we really captured the same energy that we played live. But nevertheless, Philip had this really cool intro at the start of the song, guitar opener, and it went like this.
You take that and add Jason's loud drums, Matt's loud bass, Joe's loud guitar in a regular sized living room. It was pretty intense, pretty cool.
You know, Desert Rose was one of the songs that we really liked to jam on. Unfortunately, our CD version recording that we did just didn't have the same energy that some of our jam sessions did.
And it never really turned out quite like we imagined on the album, but live we would play it there, and you know, lights out, strobe lights on, everybody jumping around, just crazy, just acid rock sound, just like a heavy Led Zeppelin or you know, yeah, just awesome song, and everybody loved it. People go nuts, and we've got nuts playing it, and it just didn't quite translate as well when we had to record it all separate, and just kind of, it was a big jam song. So
in the song Desert Rose, there was a phrase that I did that was kind of a hook throughout the song that I had at the intro over Philip's chords. That was just a classic rock lick that everybody plays, and I'm sure I picked it up from some maybe late 60s, early 70s song. But anyway, it went something like this in a higher position. And then I'd go up a string and play the same lick. I remember doing that, and I could have even played it on the lower position on the neck as well throughout the song.
And the words, the lyrics were just sort of a formality, you know, just an excuse to have this jam going.
it wound up last on the album, partly because it was a big rock out anthem, but also I think because it just didn't quite turn out the way we wanted to. It was really supposed to be maybe the best song on the album, the heaviest and biggest hit. Still a good song, but
goes. Because you had to accent that. You can't just.
And I think that was my idea, but I couldn't swear to. I just wanted those
It
hits.
was your idea.
I wanted all the crashing hits at the same time.
Yeah, that was your idea right there.
So the lyrics to Desert Rose came about because it was so loud and so much craziness going on that I felt like you couldn't even hear the vocals. So the first lyrics that I came up with were, I can sing any line and never be heard. I can write any rhyme without a single word. And the rest of it just sort of fell into place after that, just a mess of poetry. And so you'd be strumming the chords A minor, D, while Joe's playing all these solos over it. And then you'd come in and sing these lines. And then you'd pull away, go back to going crazy while he's playing leads. And then of course you had the riff where everybody's doing hits. You know, I'm da-na-na-na, Jason, da-na-na-na, and everybody hitting. And then you go back into the vocals, you know, and you sing, I gave you a name, or was it in a dream? I whispered it soft, I know what it means. You know, just stuff, because it was almost like nobody's gonna hear or understand anyway, so I just made up a poetic jumble.
On the song Desert Rose, I've got this guitar lick that I really stole from a lot of people listening to a lot of 70s rock at the time. So anybody from Zeppelin to Leonard Skinner, Clapton to Guns N' Roses, everybody uses this guitar lick, and it's not a real hard one to play, but it sounds pretty cool. And I played it in 2 different octaves and overdubbed. So it sounded something like this. And then I would come down and play it in a lower position.
The only other way is if we had recorded it live, and we probably did record it live, like we did Hourglass and others, but then that CD was erased, and you know, we had a lot of those songs that wound up on the second CD that made up the second CD. We had a lot of those that were recorded live onto a CD, full band. And it seems like, at least in our memory, it was great, better than what went on to the final product, but who knows? You know, the album finished version, and we wound up putting it at the end, partly because it was kind of an epic jam, but also because it didn't really turn out. You know, that should have been one of the best heavy hitters on there. For some reason, it didn't translate as well live. You know, there was no comparison to it live. When we were doing it live, it was just it was like a Led Zeppelin, just like almost like an acid rock, just jam out. And you know, when people were there, they really loved it, and we would just kind of go nuts. You know, lights go out, strobe lights come on. You know, we're just running around, just crazy, just rocking hard. So he had some of those like that. Desert Rose, we would just go off. There's long sections that were improv, and you had that riff, and you could sort of extend it out as long as you wanted with the reverb and resonance, and then kind of come back. And there was no count to that. It was just all by feel, and you'd all sort of just feel, and it dies down enough, and everybody kind of, and there was chunks of that were just so loose and improv that, you know, and it was just this jam. And then Joe was just tearing it up on these leads and wah pedal, all these effects, and just he was unleashed on that format. Now the second album came around. I think again we probably should have got to where we were playing live. We should have lined up gigs and really gone for that, but we just had a lot of creativity going on. We had so many songs oozing out of us at that point. After we'd finished the first album, man, there was a lot of songs we were coming up with, and I was getting a lot more cranked out at that point, ready to go. That was Philip. You know, he was coming up with some great new stuff too, and he was, you know, whether that was cause or effect, he was coming up with some good rockers too. So Desert Rose was one that was just,
and it was big, loud, and it was long, and it was just wild. And we would, for Desert Rose, we would turn out the lights, and it would either be black or maybe a distant light in one of the other rooms, so just ambient lighting of some kind coming in, or somebody had brought in a strobe light, so we'd hook up a strobe light and we'd have that thing going, pitch black but a strobe light. We're just jamming out to Desert Rose, and it never, when we had to put it condensed into the BR8, it never had a chance. It just never translated down into the box from where it was. And that's quite possibly the most disappointing song on the second CD is Desert Rose, because it's pretty good on the CD, but it was a monster jam. It was one of the top things we had in the band house. And then Hourglass too. Hourglass is arguably the best song on the CD, but it was right there, monster jam, right there with Desert Rose. And but we jumped off of amps.
I remember recording it live a couple times with maybe some people in the room, maybe not. But I do remember having a couple recordings that were a lot better than what we ended up with on our CD. And there's no telling whatever happened to those recordings, but a lot more energy, and I know I certainly played better on that song live than I did on the recording.
I think Desert Rose tops the list for me. There was nothing like performing a song live as far as one of my songs, all four of us in the band house, people watching, and maybe even including the tax office in a lot of ways. There was nothing like it. Just the energy, the craziness, the loudness, the lights, the atmosphere, and then just going up and singing those verses and then pulling away and, you know, going crazy again. What a rush. You can't explain the rush of being young and having a monster jam like that and doing it with your friends and your brother and your, you know, people watching you. It's just indescribable. I mean, just the rush is unbelievable. There was nothing like it.
Where it goes, there's a road, no one knows. I can sing any line and never be heard. I could write any rhyme without a single word. If I sang your song, would you even hear? If I said I was wrong, would you shed a